Good afternoon. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Sunday. So we just got back from church. I had a little bit of lunch and I decided I'd come down and piddle in the basement with some of my seeds. And I thought, well, since I'm doing that, I had a couple people ask about how I seed save and maybe give a little information on that. So I thought I would share with you guys what I know and what I do as far as collecting seeds for my flowers and my garden and kind of how I prepare them under here in the basement and use them again for next year. I'll pull all these out and talk about the different ones that I do and kind of how I do them. And excuse the mess. I've not got things organized how I want them to be just because I've been doing a lot of stuff outside, but it's getting that time of year. I want to get everything going under here and organized and put where they need to be. That way when springtime comes, I know which ones I'm looking for and which ones they are. So one of the things I want to say really quick is some of the seeds on certain plants that you may have bought, you know, from a store or from a seed packet, you know, they may say hybrid on them. So some of those may not reproduce the next year the same, or they could be sterile. So try to choose heirloom varieties. A lot of times if you have different varieties of a certain vegetable or fruit, bees and other things that pollinate your plants, they may go from one flower to the next and they may cross-pollinate them. So next year, where you had an heirloom variety, you may have a hybrid next year. You may have a combination of something. And there are ways to go about trying to keep something from being cross-pollinated, and you can kind of look that up. We'll get into that in another episode. But the best thing to do is if there's one thing you really like, just try to grow that one type of variety, and then you won't introduce cross-pollination. I'm going to start off talking about bell pepper. I think I had an episode a few videos back that did talk about bell pepper. So basically it is super easy, a lot of peppers are, to take the seeds off of. I would just leave the pepper on the plant, the one you're wanting to remove seeds from, let it fully mature, even get to where it might wrinkle a little bit, but don't let it rot. And then at that point, just take the pepper off like I did a bell pepper, and then I just chop the outer part of it off. You'll see the little seeds right in the middle of it, and I'll take like a spoon and scrape those off. And you want to make sure that you put these like on a paper plate with a paper towel underneath, or just lay them out on a paper towel and make sure you mark them and just let them dry out really good. I've had mine under here for about a week and they're dry. And I made sure I marked it, that way I would know, because I'm going to have quite a few different seeds down here and I don't want to get them mixed up because some of them can look very similar. I'm just going to put these in a mason jar and I'm going to mark my jar or my lid, because I keep all my old lids for purposes like this. You want to store these in a cool, dry spot. If you have a basement, perfect. You don't want to leave them out in the sun somewhere where they're going to get a ton of moisture and all that kind of stuff. So I've been keeping my stuff in the basement and they do really good, but you may have, you know, a closet somewhere you can put them in. Let's move on to the next, another easy one, and that is okra. Now I'm going to have to walk down to my garden to show you guys my okra, and I don't know if it's quite ready to be picked yet for seed storage, but it might be. So let's go down there and check it out. Say hello to the chickens. Hey chickens. Now I've got fall crop going on down here. I've got to get down here today and check on my green beans, probably harvest some of them. And we're really fixing to till up the garden. And so I've got some okra right here drying. So with okra, as you can see, it is drying out, and that's what you're going to want when you're going to want to seed save. You're going to want to make sure it's really dry. And you'll know when it's ready because all you have to do is squeeze it and it will just crack right open. And I've got different places in here that I store seeds, but as far as harvesting them, you want to get them in like a little bucket or something, because when you start popping them open, they'll probably fly out everywhere. Alright, literally guys, these are so easy. They just pop right out of here. And one of these has a lot of seeds. Each one of these would produce a plant that would produce tons of these. I mean, literally, if you had, I have like 5 plants down the garden for okra, and it could probably feed my whole community with okra next year or more. So you want to make sure they're really dry. I still set mine out usually a couple days on a paper towel, but I think they're already dry. And then at that point, you want to put them in a mason jar or a bag. Some people put them in baggies, just seal them up good and tight. Some people put stuff in paper bags, but I always use mason jars and label them, and I think they do wonderful. Now the same goes for beans, and I'm growing green beans right now. I usually put extra plants out there that I'm going to save the seeds on, and you want to let those bean pods, the part that you eat, dry up on the plant. You'll know when they're completely dry because you can stick your fingernail into the bean pod and it won't dent in. And when they're dried up and you're ready to save them, I even bring them inside and still put them on a paper towel for a few days to make sure they're completely dry. And then I store them the same way. I put them in a mason jar. But like I said, you could put them in a bag. It'd probably work just as fine. Now for tomato seeds, it's a little bit different of a process. And I'll show you guys how I do that. Currently I have some right now that I've got to the process of on a paper towel drying out. And these are some rainbow tomato seeds that actually somebody brought me a beautiful tomato. And I thought I'm going to save the seeds on these. Now I don't know if they've been cross-pollinated or not, but I went ahead and did the process, and I'll grow these somewhere kind of separately labeled so I'll be able to see what they look like next year. And these are to the point now I can go ahead and put these in a mason jar. They're completely dried up now, and I will go ahead and label those and put them in a spot up here with my tomatoes. Now I'll tell you guys quickly how I do tomatoes. I do have a video, it may have been last year that I took it, that shows you the whole fermentation process on this. You should be able to type it under the search bar under my channel and be able to pull it up. I'll somehow try to figure out if I can link it somehow. The first thing you want to do is find a good mature healthy tomato. You want to take a spoon and scoop the seeds, and they'll be like in this gel. Get all of that, go ahead and put it like in a mason jar. You want to fill the jar with water about half full, and then go ahead and label your jar. You can use like glass markers for this. Sometimes I don't like to put tape on jars. Sometimes it's hard to get off, but sometimes I can't get around it, so I do. You want to set the jar on the counter to ferment, not in direct sunlight though. Now if you have trouble with flies or something, I would go ahead and get something to put over that, like a paper towel. That way it can still breathe. I think they have fermenting lids out there you might be able to find at the store or purchase online. Now after several days, there's going to be a separation. The seeds are going to go to the bottom and the pulp is going to come to the top. The seeds will no longer have that gel around them. Now you don't want to leave the seeds in there too far past this time, about 3 days, because the seeds will actually start to break down. Now scoop everything off the top of this stuff that's floating around in the jar. Then you want to go ahead and put the seeds into like a mesh strainer and wash them out really good. Make sure everything's separated and off the seeds. And then you want to get some paper towels and put your seeds on it and let everything dry out really good. And then that's it. Go ahead and let them dry real good before you get ready to store them. And like I said, I put mine in a mason jar. And I grow corn, and I'll leave it on the vine and let it dry out, and then take it off and store that as well. And then, let me think what else I do. And then these things like pumpkin and squash, you can kind of let them dry out too out there, and then go ahead and once they've stopped growing and changing color, the seeds are completely dry inside of them, cut them open, put them inside on a paper towel. Same thing, put them in a jar. You've got all that to reuse again next year. Now cucumbers and melons, they're another wet gel-coated seed. You do the same things like you would on a tomato. Follow that same process. And some things you'll have to allow to bolt in order to get the seeds from them, like, let's see, some of the herbs and some of the vegetables, carrots, lettuce, basil. And what that means is letting that plant go past the edible stage until it produces that flower. So that is another way of preserving. So there's different ways to preserve things, but it's just so awesome that you can have all the stuff again next year, that you don't have to worry about going to the store and finding it or purchasing it again. And plus you'll have so much more than you had the previous year that if you had to go buy it from the store. Now I'll show you guys kind of the way I store some of the stuff. So here's one of the things that I store my seeds in, and I'll show you guys. This is like a little photo storage thing I got from Walmart. And it has all these little compartments in it that I've labeled bell pepper, and all the different varieties of bell pepper I'll put inside this thing. Good way to organize your seeds. So I keep all these in here. I'll keep even my old packets so I know what variety I grew the previous year or the same year. Cucumbers, cherry tomatoes, cantaloupe, watermelon, sunflowers. You guys, I've got all kinds of them. Tomatoes, and the list goes on. And then here's all my jars for storage, different ones. Sometimes I'll just drop the seed packet in there if I've got some left from seeds that I'm growing that same year. I may want to go back in and plant some more, especially if I'm doing succession planting where, you know, I'm planting a few this week, I'm planting a few the next week. That way they're not harvesting all at the same time. Beans, I do buy seeds from the store as well. I am a seed hoarder. And I've got little packets of flower seeds. Y'all, I've got seeds people give me. I've got stuff in bags. So for instance, here is a white cone flower. This one dried up on the plant. And you can see it's very prickly. It is very sharp. This is one flower, and all of these things that are poking up through here are seeds. So you pull them out, and y'all can see all of the seeds that's inside of there. Look at that, all from one flower, and there's a lot more in that same flower. So it's a no-brainer to seed save. It's not hard to do at all. And then I just label it. Here's a zinnia flower, and a lot of times I keep my most favorite ones, and the prettiest ones, the ones that just had the most vigor and size that I loved. So this one I can see was a really big one. It had a really pretty orange color. I will say with zinnias, on saving them, you can leave them on the plant and let them dry up, or you can bring them inside after you've cut them or displayed them in a picture or a vase, and then you can just let them dry and use them the same way. They'll be just as good the same way. Now, as far as zinnia seeds, these were all of the petals on the plant. That is what the seed is. So when it dries, you pull it out, and at the very end it looks like a little shovel. And I just pulled out 3, and that is going to be 3 different flowers. So y'all, this is a drop in the bucket of the zinnias I keep. They are one of my absolute favorite flowers, so I cut all of the heads off of them and keep every one of them. I ended up giving them to my chiropractor, to friends, family, or just planting a billion of them for myself. Now, as far as sunflowers go, you can leave them on the plant to dry out, but I do find that the birds will really get most of the seeds if you leave them out there for a very long time. So I do love feeding birds. The finches, we get lots of yellow finches from the sunflowers. So that is one reason why I love to grow them, because I just love to bird watch. But and I leave most of the sunflower seeds out there for the birds, but I also do save a lot for myself. So if it's a sunflower that I want to keep specifically for the color or the variety, I will go ahead and take the head off of those and keep the seeds. So I do that to a lot of mine. But like I said, I have a lot of sunflowers that volunteer every year that come back. So I have so many, and I do like to succession plant those. They'll have a window of time where they're up and looking beautiful. So then I'll have another week where new ones will come up, and the next week more will come up. So I always have some that are just really pretty. On these sunflowers, there's different sizes. These are my teddy bear sunflowers. If you pull these off right here, the seeds are obviously in the center, and they hold a lot of seeds, even one head. I've got some massive ones over here, and I'll show you guys these. Here's one of the big heads that I've been drying for a while, and you can see all this in the center. This is obviously all of the seeds, and these are some bigger ones, so I just pulled one out right here. And there's one of the seeds, so it's just full of them. I like to sit down on days that I don't have a whole lot to do in the wintertime and just have a relaxing day separating all these seeds. But I have so many, you guys. Look at that. There's just a lot of sunflower seeds in all these. I mean, check out all of those seeds. Is that not cool? Nature is amazing. And some people put these on like a screen to separate them, which I probably will do. I keep a lot of varieties of sunflowers, so I don't mind to mix them in, because I think when they come up and they're all different, I do specifically keep my teddy bear sunflowers separated. That way I know kind of where I'm going to plant those. They're a little bit smaller. I do like them in certain places just because they are a dwarf variety. But I'm not against a sunflower popping up anywhere. Now, before I head out of the basement, I want to show you guys my aquarium. I cleaned it last night, and I got some benefits from that. One, my aquarium looks beautiful today. I did cut back some plants because they were really overgrown. Everything in here is natural plants. All of the water that I removed from the aquarium, I put in buckets, and I used for fertilizer for all my plants. Last night I went through the greenhouse and gave everybody a big drink of all that good fish poop natural fertilizer. But look at that, aren't they pretty? I love all the fish. I do a water change on this tank about every 3 months because it has so many plants that it's just a really good ecosystem in here, and you really don't have to do water changes that often because the plants take up all the nitrates from the poop. It's just a good cycle in here. Fish are very happy. They have lots of babies in here. I have a lot of snails that have reproduced in here. I have lots of plecos. They keep all the algae off the glass. I do not have to scrape the glass at all. See that little pleco right there? That's a new one. So this driftwood in here is a good environment for the plecos. They go up underneath here and they lay eggs and they hatch in here. I've got 2 male lemonhead plecos, and then I've got 1 female. She's right there on top of the driftwood. So yeah. All right, let's go to the greenhouse. All right, so I think I'm gonna go inside and enjoy my Sunday afternoon, observe a little bit of rest. But before I do, I'm gonna go in and water the greenhouse, and I'll take you guys in there with me because I figure since it's therapeutic for me to go in there and water, I'll share that with you guys.